Hello, everyone, and today I'll be talking about the average sleep time from the time of 1970 all the way to 2018. Also, I'll be making future predictions of the average sleep time from now all the way to 2050. Look at the big world and the world around us. We have 51% of people, half of the global population, that get less sleep than they need. Now, getting less sleep than needed is really unhealthy as that it increases your chance of heart disease, it increases your chance to obesity, and increases your chance of death by 12%, which is a significant increase in people who get normal amount of sleep. So now we're going to be looking back into the 1970s to see how people slept during the 1970s until now. And then now we're going to make a future prediction on how people will be sleeping in the 2050s. So as you can see on the scatter plot data on the TI-84, we can see that it started off really low, but it started jumping high over time. But then soon after 2010, the sleep time has now dropped significantly all the way down to 397. Alright, so as you can see here, we are going to put the first regression. Now this regression will be a linear regression. And now here's the equation for the linear regression. Now that as I plot it on the graph, we can see that it's a linear regression with a decreasing slope, which seems very reasonable for the decreasing amount of sleep that people are getting around the world from 1970 until now. Now, instead of using the linear regression, I'm going to be using the quadratic regression. Now, here's the quadratic equation for the quadratic regression. Now, when we plot it on the graph, you can see how it starts to significantly increase and make a peak between 1970 to 2000, and then now it starts to drop significantly back down over time. Alright, so when we use the linear regression to predict the average sleep time in the year 2022 and the year 2050, for the year 2022, we should be getting an average of 427 minutes of sleep when we round the 426 up, and that should be equal to or equivalent to 7 hours and 7 minutes of sleep. Now, when we use the year 2050, we should be getting an average sleep time of 420 minutes or around exactly 7 hours of sleep. So now for the quadratic regression. For the year 2022, we should be getting an average sleep of about 403 minutes, which is equivalent to 6 hours and 43 minutes. Now for the year 2050, we should be getting a time of 300 minutes, or equivalent to 5 hours of sleep. Now the linear regression looks very reasonable because between the year 2022 and 2050, the numbers has not changed significantly. It has stayed very steady and has dropped only 7 minutes, which makes it so reasonable. However, what makes it not reasonable is that in the future, there are potential for robots taking over work, and when there are robots taking over work, human beings don't have to worry about them, so they can, instead of working, can take the time to sleep in and rest. And that means more sleep. So that means the graph will like flatten out at one point and then rise up again in the future. Now the quadratic regression doesn't look reasonable at all. Now it had the potential to look reasonable because our ancestors used to get less sleep than us mainly because of survival. And on this graph, it is scaled down by every 4 years, and when the quadratic goes down on the other side of the y-axis, it reaches the x at around the 1900s or like the 1850s, between that point. So it is not reasonable for that point to be working out. And also, the other point is that by the year 2050, it should be reaching 5 hours of sleep for average time, which seems so unreasonable for any human being to be sleeping for 5 hours. It is very dangerous, very risky, and it will make a huge impact into our human lives if we sleep for only 5 hours. Alright, so now for this one, we have used both the linear regression and the quadratic regression to find the mean of both of these regression at the year 2050. So I've added both numbers and divided by 2, and we have gotten 360 minutes of sleep. Now, is this reasonable? I believe yes, it is reasonable only if people keep their habits of sleeping less over the next 30 years. If people keep sleeping less for the next 30 years, then seeing 6 hours of sleep is very reasonable. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.